Here he comes, John.
Good evening. Former President Richard Nixon is dead. He died just a short time ago at a New York hospital. Here's ABC's Lisa Stark.
Since Monday night, after suffering a stroke that left him partially paralyzed and unable to speak. Doctors blamed the stroke on a long-time heart condition, an irregular heartbeat, which apparently caused a blood clot that traveled to the brain. Mr. Nixon's condition worsened on Tuesday when doctors discovered swelling of the brain. On Thursday, he lapsed into a coma. Nixon did have a living will that apparently was not placed on a respirator according to his wishes. The 37th President of the United States, Richard Milhous Nixon, was the only one ever to resign from office, brought down by the Watergate scandal. A pit bull of a politician, Nixon early on made his reputation as an ardent anti-communist. Yet as president, he opened the door to relations with China and negotiated the first arms reduction treaty with the Soviet Union. But in his later years, even Mr. Nixon admitted what he would most be remembered for was Watergate and his painful departure from the White House 5 years and 201 days after he got there. Moments ago, President Clinton came out to the Rose Garden to extend his sorrow to the Nixon family. He praised Mr. Nixon as a statesman and a man who gave to his country until the end. Mr. Clinton said he will be attending Mr. Nixon's funeral. That is expected to be held in California. He will be buried in Yorba Linda at the Nixon Library next to his wife, Pat. Again, Richard Milhous Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, dead tonight at the age of 81. This is Lisa Stark reporting from New York. Now back to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And tonight we have more looking back at the controversial career of Richard M. Nixon.
And as you've just heard, he was the 37th President of the United States and the only one ever to resign. Nixon thawed relations with the communist world, but could not escape the stain of the Watergate scandal. Nixon was elected to Congress for 2 terms in 1946 and 1948. He made his early reputation as a dedicated anti-communist and a member of the House Committee on Un-American Activities. In 1950, he ran for the United States Senate from California and won by a large margin. In 2 more years, Nixon was tapped by Republican presidential nominee Dwight Eisenhower to be his running mate. But Nixon almost lost the number 2 spot on the ballot when it was disclosed that, while a senator, he had received more than $18,000 in a slush fund from California businessmen. However, Nixon successfully defended himself in the famous Checkers speech on primetime television, Checkers being the name of the Cocker Spaniel given his daughters during the campaign.
And you know, the kids, like all kids, love the dog. And I just want to say this right now, that regardless of what they say about it, we're going to keep it.
In 1960, after 8 years as vice president, Nixon ran for the presidency. Political analysts said his performance on a nationally televised debate against Democrat John Kennedy here in Chicago severely hurt his campaign. Kennedy defeated Nixon, but by only 113,000 votes. After a losing campaign for governor of California in 1962, Nixon prematurely announced his retirement from politics.
You don't have Nixon to kick around anymore.
Nixon made his comeback, finally being elected president in 1968 on a promise to end the Vietnam War, defeating Democrat Hubert Humphrey. It took Nixon 4 years to end the war, and he was re-elected by a landslide in 1972 over Senator George McGovern. But Nixon soon fell victim to the Watergate scandal, and finally, facing certain impeachment, resigned as president, the only time this has happened in United States history.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
Since then, Nixon has served as something of an unofficial diplomat for the United States, writing books and traveling the world, even visiting Russia just last month. There will be more on the death of Mr. Nixon on Nightline.